It seems unlikely that Tom's wife will be able to have children. This is another reason why marrying an older woman isn't advisable. Jason remarked. At 40, I found myself employed at a new company and was directly reported by the department head, Jason. I was shaking with anger and insisted that he retract his statement, but Jason seemed oblivious to his own blunder. Worse yet, at the founding anniversary party, Jason and his wife insulted my wife and me. Oh my! Is this your mother? Wife? I thought she was your mother. Amidst a small crowd that had gathered and fallen silent around us, the president of the company, Mr. Smith, rushed over with a pale face. Oh my, I never expected to meet you here. My name is Tom, and I'm 40 years old. I work as an engineer in medical device services. The company is a leader in the industry. I joined as a skilled employee with prior work experience last year, and it's my first year here. I've resolved to work here for many years, striving daily. In my current workplace, there's a prevailing notion that joining a new workplace at 40 is rather late. From my first day, Jason had looked at me suspiciously. Even if you have engineering experience, coming here at that age, did you make a big mistake at your last job? Or do you plan to leave this one soon too? Perhaps it was understandable for him to think so at the beginning. I had worked as an engineer in other companies until my late 20s, but then I spent years abroad until I was 39 last year. Initially, I went to France on a working holiday where my sister was living after she got married. Then, for about 10 years, I lived in places like Africa and the Middle East, moving every few years as part of Doctors Without Borders. I served as a logistician in Doctors Without Borders. A logistician is responsible for procuring and managing the supplies and equipment necessary for aid. I also coordinated patient transport and ensured the routes for it. I had a non-medical staff role working alongside medical professionals. When I first went to France, it was meant to be a one-year working holiday, just a chance to see a bit of the world while I was young. After over 5 years of working as an engineer in the US, I couldn't picture myself living the same life forever at that company. I found myself liking this earnest way of living abroad. Using my skills fully to live each day was enjoyable to me. I regretted not having experienced living abroad earlier like my sister. My sister moved to France early for her university education, then found a job and got married there. My sister also said this. Tom, like me, you thrive better abroad than just coast along in the US. Why don't you come back after your working holiday ends? I truly felt the same way. So, after a year passed and I briefly returned to the US, I was working part-time while preparing to go back to France. It was then that an enticing job opportunity I found determined the rest of my life. I came across a job posting for Doctors Without Borders. It involved traveling to medically underserved areas worldwide to help people while living among them. The work required dedicating one's labor to assist those suffering from conflicts, natural disasters, and poverty. Upon researching further, I found that they were hiring electricians, architects, and even engineers for medical device services. All these positions required practical experience. Having experience as an engineer, I filled out the application and submitted it immediately. During the interview, they inquired extensively about my motivation. I want to support healthcare with whatever I can do. I'm eager to use my language skills, physical strength, and determination to help others. I spoke passionately and passed. After that, I registered as a temp staff and participated in domestic training. I spent over 6 months working part-time until I could participate in training abroad. My first assignment was in the Middle East and Africa. In the town I was assigned to, there was a shortage of vaccines for infectious diseases, causing many to become severely ill from conditions that could be easily treated in a hospital in the US. The medical team's mission was to vaccinate all the children in the town center. I was responsible for managing the vaccine transport vehicles and drivers. Just transporting the vaccines was a difficult task in this town. The roads were in terrible condition, and in the scorching heat, it was challenging to manage the temperature of the vaccines. Vaccines that finally arrived safely would be ruined when the town's power supply failed. Interactions with the drivers were also complicated. English alone was not enough, leading to frequent misunderstandings and arguments. However, when we finally completed the mission, I felt a profound sense of happiness. The sense of unity with the doctors, staff, locals, and patients provided an irreplaceable feeling of accomplishment. By that time, nearing 30, I had forgotten about returning to my previous company or the US and decided to make this job my career. Over the next 10 years, I grew not only as an engineer but also as a general logistician who could lead other staff members. Although there were many dangers, and I even became seriously ill myself, I felt like I had found my true calling. Being single and unencumbered, I vaguely thought I would continue performing these medical missions alone indefinitely. That changed last year when I met a woman, and, fortunately, we proceeded to get married. Her name was Catherine, and she was a doctor working with Doctors Without Borders. Catherine and I had worked diligently on the same team, and at some point, it became clear that we were attracted to each other. Although Catherine was into me, she avoided discussing anything further. "I'm 10 years older than you, Tom." Indeed, at the time, Catherine was 49, 10 years senior to me at 39. I always felt strange about her words. Given her longer tenure in this line of work, Catherine should understand that age difference didn't matter. In many parts of the world, couples with significant age differences are not uncommon. Indeed, it's not unusual for a woman to be older. While it might be noticeable in America, both Catherine's and my sensibilities were more aligned with our international experiences. So age shouldn't be a concern. To me, Catherine was not only a doctor I respected but also a dignified and beautiful woman, a beloved partner. "I'm serious about wanting to marry you, Catherine." I often asserted so. However, Catherine wouldn't say yes. So, I thought perhaps there was something else concerning her that she wasn't telling me except for age gaps. And I didn't push for more information. One day, an emergency mission started in the medical group. A hospital in a conflict zone was at risk. The mission involved safely transporting pregnant women waiting to give birth to another region. I was busy securing enough gasoline to ensure the round-trip transport. Somehow, I managed to get the car going and safely transported everyone to another hospital. But then I realized that Catherine hadn't arrived at the new hospital. When I asked the local staff, they informed me Catherine is still at the original hospital. She said she wouldn't be returning for a while, despite the original hospital being at risk of getting caught in the conflict. I rode a bicycle several miles back to the original hospital. There, I found Catherine, earnestly trying to make frightened children smile. The other children were those of pregnant women. Due to limitations, we could only transport a minimum number of people, and children from larger families had to be left behind. Catherine chose to stay at the original hospital, aware of the risks, to encourage these children. Seeing Catherine's decision, I thought I should stay and help too. Though troubled, Catherine said to me, "Thank you." That night, after the children had settled down to sleep, Catherine shared her story. "I have an older sister. When we were kids, I was frail, so our parents paid more attention to me than to her. I think she must have felt very lonely. Of course, those who are more vulnerable should be helped first, but in doing so, others are sacrificed. These children, separated from their mothers and siblings, must feel incredibly anxious. After getting my medical license, I left home and even left the US because I was healthy, and I hoped my parents would start caring more about my sister. I wonder how they are. I haven't been back for so long, but I hope my sister and parents are getting along well and are healthy." Listening to Catherine's story, I felt I understood the source of her incredible character. Her strong sense of self-sacrifice stemmed from her concern for her sister during their childhood. She probably thought she shouldn't be happier than her sister. If she couldn't bring herself happiness, I thought it was up to me to do so. The next day, as a general logistician, I confirmed the budget and devised a way to transport the remaining children to the new hospital, which we managed to accomplish. Once it was no longer necessary to worry about the left-behind children, Catherine moved to the new hospital. There, I proposed to her again. "Catherine, for all the sacrifices you make, I will work even harder to protect you." Finally, Catherine said yes through tears. When we got married, we didn't have a ceremony or a party. Instead, we distributed food to the impoverished. Everyone congratulated us, and we felt incredibly happy. To support Catherine, I decided to return to the US alone and seek employment. Since it's rare for both of us to stay in the same region and often in places without internet, I decided to have a base in the US so I could always be reachable and Catherine could return whenever she needed. That's why I re-entered the workforce as an engineer. The companies that Catherine had introduced to me were all positive about the interviews despite my being 40. I chose this major medical equipment manufacturer because they value the activities of Doctors Without Borders and even have a department dedicated to it. The company appreciated my experience and wanted me to contribute immediately as a valuable asset. Over this past year, I've worked hard to meet those expectations. Gradually, I've built good relationships with my colleagues and superiors. I still have issues with Jason, though. Tom, you've been living apart from your wife since you got married? Don't you think that sounds like a romance scam? Jason, though a department head, doesn't understand anything about Doctors Without Borders. Apparently, he has a relative who's an executive at the company and, no offense, but he's really just a figurehead. He's not involved in any critical tasks, so he always seems to have more free time than the other employees. So, he tends to be overly curious about my personal life, which is annoying. We met, fell in love, and got married, so it's definitely not a romance scam. No matter how I respond, Jason tries to delve deeper into the conversation. But your wife is much older, right? And she's a doctor. There's no reason for her to choose you. I can't see any love there. Well, look, don't worry about us. We have love. Jason looked uninterested in my words and walked away. Exasperated, I turned my attention back to the accumulating paperwork. As I was sorting through documents, Nancy from the next desk spoke to me. Tom, did you know? Jason's wife is really young. He's about 50, and she's around 30. And yet, he is saying to others that she is already old. He really likes young girls, doesn't he? Nancy, a 23-year-old, often shares office gossip. Ah, I see. You get involved with him a lot too, don't you? When I replied, Nancy made a face of disgust. I think older people are fine, but someone like Jason is just creepy. It's like he'd be okay with anyone as long as they're young. It's not about age, it should be about what's inside. I wholeheartedly agreed with Nancy's view. No matter Catherine's age, I love her for who she is inside. Last night, I received cheerful photos from Catherine. Currently, she's in a refugee camp in the Middle East, caring for children suffering from malnutrition. In the picture, Catherine was seen laughing, embraced by the local children. Despite their thinness, each child had a sparkle in their eyes, indicating that Catherine's efforts were paying off. That's wonderful. She, embracing many children, seemed just like their mother. It reminded me of what Catherine had once said. I consider myself a second mother to the kids I'm involved with. Even without my own children, I feel like I have children all over the world. I remember nodding in agreement. I opened my email to take another quick look at that picture. Catherine really is a wonderful person. Oops. Sorry. I heard Nancy's apologetic voice, snapping me out of it. Sorry, what happened? Oh, nothing, just that picture. Is she your wife? Sorry, I didn't mean to pry. Nancy pointed at my computer screen as she spoke. My apologies. I shouldn't be doing this at work. Yes, she's my wife. Checking personal emails during work hours, I was not supposed to do that. It's been a full year since we've been married, and it's true I miss her. Wow, your wife has such a beautiful smile. That's a makeup-free photo, right? She's naturally beautiful, and above all, it's a smile that truly comes from the heart. I felt genuinely pleased as Nancy praised Catherine. After watching Nancy gaze at the image for a while, I closed my laptop, saying, right. Okay, back to work. Even though I miss her so badly, that's the way work goes. If I don't work hard here in the States, I won't be able to support Catherine if anything happens. I refocused my mind and concentrated on my job. A few days later, when I arrived at the office, there was a photo on my desk. It featured a young mother and her little child, whom I didn't know. As I was wondering about it, Jason came running over. Tom, good morning. That's a photo of my wife and child. It turned out so well that I thought I'd give one to everyone in the department. So that's Jason's wife. They're quite an age-mismatched couple, as the rumors said. Your wife is beautiful, and your child is adorable. Though unspoken, it seemed to me that Jason's wife was out of his league. Haha, right? My wife used to be a model. Feel free to put it on your desk. Considering your wife can't have children, you probably should have married someone younger. What? I was taken aback by Jason's words. Excuse me, Jason. Could you take that back? Jason looked confused. Huh? I haven't said anything strange. Your wife is beyond childbearing age. You should have married someone younger, that's just the plain truth. My hands trembled. I was so angry that I felt like punching Jason for his incredibly rude comments. How can you say such things? Even without children, my wife and I. That's when Nancy interjected. Jason. That's the abuse of authority. It's also sexual harassment and moral harassment. I looked at Nancy. Nancy seemed angry as well. What? What are you talking about? Where's the harassment in that? You should stop making baseless accusations. Tom, Nancy. You both know my relatives are in the upper management, right? I was worried about losing my job, but I couldn't let Jason's remarks go. As I wondered what to do, Nancy boldly replied. I don't mind if I get transferred or demoted. But you owe Tom an apology. You were disrespectful to him and his wife. I was amazed at Nancy's courage. And I was appalled by Jason's ignorance. Even after Nancy's reprimand, Jason said, children are supposed to come with marriage, aren't they? He married someone who can't have them, so I haven't misspoken at all. There's no reason for me to apologize. Enough of this, give me back the photos. Ah, what a terrible morning. With that, Jason snatched the photo from our hands and walked away. I kept apologizing to Nancy, who was still angry, saying I'm sorry and thank you over and over, trying to calm her down. I should have been the one to get angry, but I was grateful that she did it for me. A month passed. Jason blatantly ignored Nancy and me. We didn't mind as it didn't interfere with our work. However, out of the blue, Jason suddenly came to my desk after a month. He was oddly smiling. Tom, for next month's anniversary party, it seems that all the employees with spouses had to bring their other halves to this thing. I remembered reading about the anniversary party in the company newsletter. While I assumed that it was customary for spouses to attend such events, Catherine would likely be unable to come. I don't think my wife will be able to attend due to her busy schedule. To this, Jason smirked and said, Really? Employees who aspire to advance their careers will make arrangements to attend with their spouses. It's fine if you're not interested in that, but surely, it's not because you're embarrassed to show your wife around, right? I felt anger building up again for the first time in a month. But before I could react, Jason hummed a tune and returned to his desk. Don't worry about it, Tom. Your wife is doing important work. Nancy reassured me in a soft voice. I agreed with her. That night, I received surprising news from Catherine. She would be returning home temporarily in 2 weeks. Her current project had just ended, and she had a month off before her next assignment. I was overjoyed. Finally, I would see Catherine again. That's why I had made a place for us in America for a situation like this. During our phone conversations, we excitedly planned where to go and what to eat upon her return. I also mentioned the anniversary party to her. I will definitely attend with you, Tom. I'm so happy to have such an opportunity, Catherine positively stated. So, we decided to attend the event as a couple. 2 weeks later, the day of our long-awaited reunion arrived. We spent every day feeling immensely happy. It was, in a sense, our first days of marriage together since getting married. Our time together was blissful. Then, the day of the anniversary party arrived. Catherine rented a classy dress from a rental shop. The dress suited her well. However, since her hair and skin were a bit rough from the sun in Africa, she decided to keep her makeup minimal. As we entered the ballroom at the upscale hotel, about half of the employees were there with their spouses. I proudly walked in with Catherine by my side. However, she seemed a bit off. Do I look odd? I feel like people are staring at me. I reassured her that she looked fine, but she seemed a bit self-conscious. Then, Jason and his wife appeared. Hello, Tom. Let me introduce you to my wife, Samantha. Isn't she beautiful? Jason's wife, being a former model, was indeed the most stunning and well-dressed woman at the event. I began to introduce Catherine as well. Jason has always been very helpful. This is my wife, Kathy. Before I could finish, Jason interrupted. Oh. Oh, my. Is this your mother? Because Jason deliberately spoke so loudly, colleagues started to gather around us. I responded loudly as well. No. This is my wife, Catherine. As the crowd quieted down around us, it was Samantha who spoke next. Wife? I thought she was your mother. Her beautiful face twisted into an ugly sneer. Taking her cue, Jason added, That's right. Anyone would think she's your mother. With such light makeup and messy hair. Did you bring your parent to the party to stand out? Tom? Catherine covered her face. I despised the spitefulness of Jason and his wife. The other employees around us were murmuring to each other. Tom, your mother seems to be crying. Maybe you should take her to the exit? Yeah, let's go, Catherine. You must be uncomfortable, let's step out. I couldn't stand it anymore. Enough. I've told you that Catherine is my beloved wife. If you continue to insult her, I cannot forgive you or your wife. As I shouted, Jason and his wife continued to smirk maliciously. Unforgivable, you say? Jason. Wow, quite the spirit you have there, for someone without any backing. At that moment, an elderly man made his way through the crowd to stand before us. His face pale, he exclaimed. Catherine. It is Catherine, isn't it? Upon hearing his voice, Catherine looked up and her eyes widened in recognition. John. While I was still trying to grasp the situation, a woman's voice chimed in. Excuse me, please let me through. Following the man, a woman who bore a striking resemblance to Catherine approached us. Oh. Catherine. It really is you. The elderly man, the woman who looked like Catherine, and Catherine themselves embraced and wept together. All I could do was watch. Apart from Jason's trembling voice. Mr. Smith and Miss Smith. After a good cry, Catherine introduced me to the two. This is my husband, Tom. He's a wonderful man. She then introduced the couple to me. This lady is my twin sister, Susan. And this man is John, the president of this company, her husband. According to the explanation that followed, the woman was indeed Catherine's twin sister, Susan Smith. Apparently, this medical equipment manufacturing company was founded by Catherine and Susan's grandfather. With only the twin sisters in Catherine's generation, they had no choice but to continue the family business through a son-in-law. It's this mature gentleman, John Smith. I felt embarrassed that I had been working for my company's president without knowing his face. Mr. Smith had been treated as a prospective son-in-law by the Smith family early on and seemed to have a mutual affection with Susan. However, Catherine thought her presence would make her sister give up her happiness to her. So she left home right after obtaining her medical license and never returned. Mr. Smith and Susan married and took over the family business, but they had always hoped for Catherine's return. The three of them had always been close. Catherine always gives up her own happiness for others. But finding such a wonderful partner and reuniting like this is truly wonderful. What a beautiful day. Susan cried joyfully, tears streaming down her face. Catherine, with the exact same gesture, also wept with joy. Mr. Smith, with a beaming smile, said to me, Tom, please take good care of Catherine from now on. Mr. Smith said that to me, and I responded in kind. Then, Mr. Smith sharply glared at the Jason couple and said, Jason. You said some pretty harsh things to my beloved sister-in-law. Your wife seems lovely. But she clearly doesn't understand the manners required for such an occasion. Jason cringed, but Samantha still glared back at Mr. Smith with frustration. It appeared that Samantha was a wife with a remarkably strong will. Normally, you'd think she was a mother from her look, wouldn't you? What's so funny about that? Despite Jason's attempts to stop her, Samantha continued to talk without acknowledging her fault. It's most important for a woman to be beautiful. The most beautiful woman is the most respected. So, even if it's Mr. Smith's wife, I am more important than Susan, and of course, more important than Catherine. I don't know what kind of life she has led, but I think Samantha has grown into an adult missing some essential life lessons. Being beautiful is a fortunate stroke of birth. Being born into a good family in a country as free as America is also fortunate. But I have met many people who are not so fortunate. People who have nothing to eat today, no water to drink, and children who have no place to learn. People who want to help them spend their own time and money. I believe the most beautiful people are those with beautiful hearts. People who can smile even when they can't see the future. People who rejoice in the happiness of others as if it were their own. People who can share what they have. People who can give up something important to them. The wife I chose is that kind of person. That's why I don't think Samantha is very beautiful. Samantha kept talking. Hey, you always say it too. It's a good opportunity, so say it. Mr. Smith, please promote this man to be an executive right now. He has relatives in executive positions, right? Finally, Jason hid his face and crouched down in embarrassment. Mr. Smith heard this and said, "Brad, what is this about? We forbid nepotism in our company." Then, a man who seemed to be Jason's relative stepped forward, trembling, and answered, "Oh, well, you see, there's no way he's getting promoted." Samantha shouted angrily. "What?" As things tend to pile up when they start going wrong, another person came forward. It was Nancy. Nancy stood before Catherine and greeted her. "I have always been indebted to Tom. My name is Nancy Emmons. I work under my father's maiden name because I don't want to use connections." I didn't even know that Nancy was Mr. Smith's daughter. Next, Nancy said to Mr. Smith, "It's not just my opinion but the whole department's. Jason has been harassing us terribly. I have recordings, so Dad, please listen to them later. Even our manager lacks the necessary authority." At this, Samantha looked demonic and yelled, "Don't you dare butt in, young lady. A father who listens to that kind of thing is just as bad. My husband deserves to be the next president." Then Nancy, with a calm face, stood before Samantha and said, "Your husband is always making advances towards me because I'm young. There are plenty of other young female employees he has harassed. I've recorded that too, so you should listen to it." Samantha was left speechless this time. Her face crumbled, and she looked at Jason. I was also overwhelmed by the sudden overflow of facts and couldn't say anything, just standing there. Only the lively classical music continued to echo in the venue. In such an awkward atmosphere, the first to move was Catherine. Catherine approached Samantha and patted her back. And then, she says in a calm tone to Mr. and Mrs. Jason, "You're very beautiful. Jason cherishes you very much, and so do you, right? You were just too worried about your husband and said too much. You should talk it over and reconcile soon." Despite the mean things that were said, the way she spoke so forgivingly made her seem like an angel to me. Even though she had every right to be the angriest. Catherine's kindness gradually restored a sense of calm to the venue. From the crowd, a few people approached Catherine and apologized. "I'm sorry for staring so intently. You look so much like Mrs. Smith that it made me uncomfortable." Other colleagues also tried to speak well of Jason, saying things like, "He has his good points too. He's so easygoing in the department. It's comforting." Even Samantha herself said something surprisingly virtuous to Jason. "Did I ask too much of you? I just said it because you listened to me. I'm sorry. Please don't hate me." I was once again amazed by the purity of the energy Catherine possesses. In the project, too, when Catherine is around, even anxious children and adults seem reassured. Even in situations where there's no guarantee of food for tomorrow, somehow it feels like everything will be okay. Catherine may have everything: family background, money, good looks, but even without all that, I believe she has the most beautiful heart in the world, and I must live in a way that does not disgrace such a wife. Thanks to Catherine, the awkward party was salvaged. And we were able to conclude the celebration of the foundation anniversary without further issue. After the party, Catherine and I had planned a short trip using the remaining days of her stay in America. But I canceled it. I thought it was best for Catherine to spend the remaining days with Mr. Smith and her sister. When I told her, Catherine unusually made a selfish request. I was really looking forward to it. I felt happy but firmly responded, Mr. Smith and your sister were probably looking forward to seeing you even more than I was. Honestly, I was really looking forward to the trip too. But Catherine and I will be together for a long time to come. I have plenty of time to spend with Catherine. So, giving up a few days to Mr. Smith and her sister is no big deal. I decided to give happiness to Catherine when we got married. Catherine's happiness is my happiness as well. Catherine thanked me a lot and enjoyed her remaining days with the Smiths. I was invited many times too, but honestly, as a mere employee, I didn't have the courage to spend private time with Mr. Smith. Gradually, I hope I can also join them. After Catherine went back to a conflict zone, there were changes in my department. First, Jason suddenly started learning about Doctors Without Borders. No one pointed out how strange it was that he hadn't learned this before. We all quietly watched over him. Then, Nancy quit the company. She's going back to university to pursue a medical degree. I want to become a cool woman like Catherine. It's fine for the company, I have a younger brother. Mr. Smith and Susan also said they would support Nancy in her new path. I thought the bold and strong Nancy would surely be a great doctor. On a day when a pleasant breeze was blowing, I looked up at the sky from the company rooftop and said in my heart, "Catherine, your influence is incredible. I will keep striving harder and harder."